Kit Carson, Part 11. We apprehended no danger that night, and as the men were much fatigued, no guard was posted. It was the first and last time we neglected to post a guard. Of the 3 men killed, Lahinez was particularly regretted. He'd been with us on every trip that had been made, but all of them were brave, good men. The only consolation we had for their loss was the reflection that if we had not arrived, Gillespie and his 4 men would have been killed. We lost but 3, so 2 lives had been saved. After the Indians left, each of us took a tree, expecting that they would return and attack us. We remained at our posts until daylight, when we packed up and, taking the bodies of the dead with us, started for the camp of our main party. We had proceeded about 10 miles when we found we could not possibly carry the bodies of our comrades any further. We went back from the trail about half a mile and interred them, covering the graves with logs and brush so that there was but little possibility of their being discovered. We would have taken the bodies to our camp, but the timber was so thick that they knocked against the trees, and becoming much bruised, we concluded to bury them. We reached our camp that same evening and found that the men had received orders to follow our trail. We camped for the night, and the next morning we moved on a few miles, leaving 15 men concealed in our old camp for the purpose of discovering the movements of the Indians. We'd not been gone more than half an hour when 2 Indians appeared. They were quickly killed and their scalps taken. Fremont concluded to return to California, but decided to take a different route from that by which we had last entered the country. Taking a trail that led around the opposite side of the lake, we were now located on a tributary of the lake nearly opposite to the place where we were encamped when we had the 3 men killed. In the morning, I was sent ahead with 10 chosen men with orders to send back word if I discovered any large village of Indians, and in case I should be seen by them, for me to act as I thought best. I had not gone more than 10 miles when I discovered a large village of about 50 lodges, and at the same time I knew by the commotion in their camp that they had seen us. Considering it useless to send for reinforcements, I determined to attack them. I charged on them, and we fought for some time. We killed a number of them, and the remainder fled. Their houses were built of flag, beautifully woven. They had evidently been fishing, for they had about 10 wagon loads of fish in their houses. All their fishing tackle, camp equipage, etc. was also there. I wished to do them as much damage as I could and directed their houses to be set on fire. The flag being dry, the fire was a beautiful sight. The Indians had commenced the war with us without cause, and I thought they should be chastised in a summary manner, and they were severely punished. Fremont saw the fire at a distance, and knowing that we were engaged, hurried forward to join us, but he arrived too late to share in the sport. We moved on about 2 miles from where the Indian village had been and camped for the night. After encamping, Owens and 20 men were sent back to watch for Indians. In an hour, he sent us word that 50 Indians had returned to camp, I suppose to hunt their lost and bury their dead. As soon as this information was received, Fremont and 6 men started to join him, taking a route different from that which Owens had taken so as to keep concealed. As we neared the camp, we saw only 1 Indian and immediately charged him. I was in advance. When I got within 10 feet of him, my gun snapped, and he drew his bow to fire on me. I threw myself on one side of my horse to save myself. Fremont saw the danger I was in and ran his horse over the Indian, throwing him on the ground. Before he could recover, he was shot. I consider that Fremont saved my life on this occasion, for in all probability, if he had not run over the Indian as he did, I would have been killed. We could find no more Indians, and fearing that the party seen by Owens had returned to attack our camp, we returned to it, but the Indians did not again appear. Next morning, we struck out for the valley of the Sacramento, distant about 4 days' march. Maxwell and Archambault were traveling parallel with the party, about 3 miles distance, engaged in hunting, when they saw an Indian coming towards them. As soon as he saw them, he took from his quiver some young crows that were tied thereon, concealed them in the grass, and continued approaching. When he was within 40 yards, he commenced firing. They did not intend to hurt him, wishing to talk with him, but as he kept up a continuous fire on them, and his shots were coming rather close, they were compelled to return his fire in self-defense. At the very first shot he fell and was immediately scalped. We continued our march until we struck the Sacramento. In passing down this river, we discovered a deep and narrow canyon ahead of us. Supposing that we would go through it, the Indians had placed themselves on each side for the purpose of attacking us as we passed. But we crossed the river and continued on our way by a different route and did not go into the canyon at all. Godey, myself, and another man whom I have forgotten went in pursuit of the Indians, but we were mounted on mules and they could not be caught. One man, braver than the rest, hid himself behind a large rock and awaited our approach. We rode up quite close to him before he came from his hiding place and commenced firing arrows at us very rapidly. We had to retreat and were kept so busy dodging arrows that we were unable to fire at him. After we had retreated beyond the range of his arrows, I dismounted and, taking deliberate aim, fired at him. The shot took effect and he was quickly scalped. He had a fine bow and a beautiful quiver full of arrows, which I afterwards presented to Lieutenant Gillespie. He was a brave Indian and deserved a better fate, but unfortunately he had placed himself on the wrong path. We continued our march, and on the evening of the next day, Stepp and another man went out to hunt, since we had nothing to eat in our camp and were nearly starving. Before they'd gone far, they saw an Indian watching our camp. I presume he was waiting for an opportunity to steal a mule. He was unaware of their presence, and they gradually approached him, and when they were near enough, they fired. He was killed and scalped. And the hunters returned to camp, having found no other game. We kept on our march to Peter Lawson's, meeting no further difficulty on the route. We then went down the Sacramento to the Buttes, where we pitched our camp and decided to hunt while we awaited positive orders in regard to the war. Meanwhile, a party was sent from here to surprise Sonoma, a Mexican military post. They captured it, taking one general and 2 captains prisoner, besides several cannon and a number of small arms. Soon after the fort was taken, Fremont had learned positively that war had been declared. He now marched to Sonoma and found it in the possession of the men he had sent in advance. End of Part 11.